Aloha, my name is Cameron Maciel, and I'm with Chuck Maciel, and we are jumping into Big Island TV episode 3. This episode is going to be basically talking about the learning of the banking language, and basically what we did today, we haven't done an episode in almost 3 weeks now, so we know that during this time of the year we kind of get into
time constraints.
Yeah,
because we're kind of getting pressed because of the holidays, wanting to go back to the mainland to spend time with family, like most people want to spend time with family during the holidays. We just completed a house in one area that a local family was able to buy into, which was very, very exciting. That they watched the construction of the house from day one. They've seen everything that went into the house, so they know every bit and piece of. We can't tell them nothing about the house.
Yeah.
Because
they know everything.
They know everything. They've
Yeah.
been watching it from day one, and it was kind of interesting because I remember mentioning to them, well, if you didn't know this, we insulated the house. They go, yeah, we know. We watched it being insulated.
Yeah.
So it was kind of an exciting deal that we didn't know we had an audience, but yet we had an audience.
Yeah.
And the awesome part about it was
The rewarding part about it, being a part of a first-time home buyer.
absolutely. But the biggest thing is that we didn't know they were going to be a buyer.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were watching us step by step building this house became a very exciting situation that I guess we were doing the right things because they're excited about the house. They critiqued the house and saw every stage of the building of it, which was really fun for us because it's like, wow, well, I guess we're doing the right thing because there's nothing about the house they're complaining about.
Yeah.
And so with that, getting that wrapped up, we got our finals today on it, so we're solid on moving forward. They're doing their loan and everything else, and escrow moving along. And aside from that, finishing up another house that we're working on that you seem to be like you kind of dirty this late at night. I mean, what were you working on today?
Oh, we have this large Lahala home, and the master has tons of tile, so it's a lot of the detail work that you want to pay attention on and get it done right. So there's a lot of tedious work in that. So getting a lot of work done in a day is really hard, so got to work late to get the details done.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we both work late.
Yeah, I mean, I worked on the cabinetry, getting the cabinets installed in the kitchen, getting ready to start getting our base on the cabinets ready for granite. And hopefully tomorrow we'll be able to get more of the finish work done, baseboard doors, casings, the bases on top of the cabinets to get granite going on that, and then you'll continue on the master bath. We're kind of on a time crunch because we're scheduled to leave in a few days to go back to the mainland, so we're trying to push to get it done.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the good thing about it is you're documenting the work you're doing.
Yeah.
So
today I actually, right when I got to the Lahala today, I actually made an intro video of walking through the house and showing what work's already done and showing the tile. So a lot of these audiences that we have on many different platforms between Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, they're seeing the stages as we're doing them. So it's really cool.
Well, that's good because then they can actually see, people who are familiar with the work. They can tell whether or not we're doing any shortcuts.
Yeah.
They can tell whether or not we're spending time on the detail.
Yeah.
And they can see how we're taking our time on getting the work done.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the qualities of doing the documenting of this is that people can see the stages of the house being built.
Yeah.
So
not even for everyone, but even the buyer that buys a home, they have kind of like
an evidence.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like they could watch even if they weren't around when the house was being built, they have this kind of footage to like jump in and watch how their home was built.
Absolutely. No, which is really good information for them because a lot of times, it's kind of like watching, buying a house, but you don't know what's involved in the house.
Yeah.
And along the way
The
you've been
story
documenting
behind it.
Absolutely. You've been documenting the framing, the trusses, now going into the finish work and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They can actually see all the work that's involved in building the house and actually see that it is a lot of work involved.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of tedious time in the details to get that finished product.
Mm-hmm.
So great. But aside from that, today we want to talk about trying to minimize the anxiety as well as the frustration of learning what banking is all about. A lot of times that people go into the banks or they go to mortgage brokerages, they're not real familiar with what they're talking about. And the unfortunate thing about it is that, you know, it's just human nature. You know, human nature that people are nervous. They don't want to look like they're uneducated, or they don't know what's going on. And I'm hoping that what we can do here is that we can actually take this information, which is basic information.
So can you put into like a role play almost, as if you were the bank and I was the home buyer, and you're going through the process real quick and you're naming off what kind of terms?
Okay, so here's the thing. You're going to come into the bank. You've never bought a home before. So right off the bat, you're nervous.
Oh, yeah.
You're intimidated. You're like, oh my gosh, this is huge. This is giant. You know, what am I getting myself into? Well, you already have that anxiety already of buying, wanting. You're not buying yet. You want to buy.
Yeah.
And then you got this person behind the desk who is actually going to start naming off a bunch of things to you that you have no clue about. They're just doing it in acronyms because it's simpler for them. But you know, when they start talking about PITI and impound accounts and escrows,
They want to nod
and you know, oh yeah, okay,
I know
okay.
what that is.
And you know, and the thing about it is that, you know, that we've talked about it before. Those people go home and they look at each other and they're like, "What were they talking about?"
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought you knew. You were nodding your head yes.
Yeah.
So we want to kind of like bring that stuff down and simplify it, so that when you do go into a bank or a mortgage broker and they use these terms, you know exactly what they're saying. You know exactly what they're talking about, and you're familiar with it. So when you're nodding your head, I understand, you understand. And the challenge of it is that I don't understand why these bankers or mortgage brokers don't want to take the time to walk you through the steps of learning what you're dealing with.
Well, I think the biggest problem is because if the home buyer is already nervous and they don't want to sound uneducated, then they might get basically the feeling like, I need to know what I'm talking about or what I'm listening to, and if they're not answering questions, then a bank or mortgage broker is not going to go into detail, especially if you're not answering questions.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Or asking questions.
And that's what I'm hoping that what we can do here is we can take a lot of these terms, we can take a lot of these acronyms, and we can actually break them down step by step what each letter of the acronym actually means. So that when a new home buyer, first-time home buyer, you know, because that's the same thing too. They talk about first-time home buyers. You know, what is that? Well, we want to talk about that. We want to talk about what those terms mean. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're educating the consumer, so that when they walk into a bank or they walk into a mortgage broker, they have the confidence, they have the knowledge, they have the security to know that what that banker or broker is going to say to them, they're going to have the education to know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to break down today. Is we're going to talk about the different types of loans.
Okay.
And there's only a couple of different types of loans. So on a first-time home buyers program, that's basically people buying a home for the first time. The funny thing about it is it doesn't necessarily apply to someone buying a home for the first time. There's a criteria behind it. So even the statement of a first-time home buyer is very misleading. When you buy a home for the first time, you're considered a first-time home buyer.
Yeah.
But after a number of years has passed and you buy again, you can still be considered a first-time home buyer. And it's the way the program's structured.
Okay.
Okay. So the idea of a first-time home buyer program is to actually try to get people to come in and buy a home. So the traditional way in America is to buy a FHA loan. So most people are going to say, okay, FHA loan, what is that? Well, it's the most simplest loan you can get, and it's a Federal Housing Administration loan, which basically means that the government backs the loan. So the requirements for that has some rigidity, but it also has a lot of flexibility. The rigidity is on an FHA loan, you have to live there. So you're getting the loan, it's for you to live there. So it can't be an investment home. So you can't get an FHA loan with the intent of turning around and using it as an investment, meaning you're going to rent it out. So when you get an FHA loan, you have to say you're going to live there. This is my house. This is my home. So because you're doing that, that now becomes more of a root base, which means this is home, this is where I'm living, this is where I'm gonna be, I'm gonna protect this. Whereas if they allowed you to do this on an investment, the investment house is secondary to your primary house. You're gonna take care of your home before you think about your secondary home. So on an FHA, the standards and requirements are not as rigid as it would be for an investment home. So as a first-time home buyer, it's gonna be a little easier for you to qualify for an FHA loan. And there's less money to put down on an FHA loan. So FHA, like we said, is a Federal Housing Administration loan that's backed by the government that says, okay, home buyer, you agree to live here. We agree to make the rules a little flexible for you to buy this house that you agree to live in. And then you live in the house. And then that's some of the requirements. So some of the things that are flexible on it is,
So what are some of the dangers part? Okay, let's say if someone's getting an FHO and they don't plan on living there, then what happens? What are some of the things that could go wrong with something like that?
well, they can call the note. Because now you basically said you were going to live in the house and you didn't live in the house. And as a result of that, they can say, okay, well, you need to pay up the money or we're going to foreclose on the house. So you got to be careful with that. You don't want to be tiptoeing around on this saying, well, I'm just going to tell them I'm going to live there, but I'm really not going to, I'm going to rent it out.
Yeah.
You can get yourself in a lot of trouble on that because that would actually teeter on fraud. Okay. Now,
Good to know.
you might be, in a situation where circumstances may force you to do something different, but your intent should always be that you're going to live there because that's what you told them you were going to do. So, but again, things can change.
Yeah.
So now, aside from an FHA loan, would be a conventional loan. Now, a conventional loan is basically anybody can get a conventional loan. There are no requirements in terms of being a low income or first time buyer or anything of that nature. But on a conventional loan, traditionally, they're going to want you to have 20% down. So you figure on a $200,000 house, they're going to want you to put $40,000 down. That's a lot of money for most people. Not only do they want 20% down, you got to cover your closing costs, which we're going to get into some of those details of closing costs.
Yeah.
So on a conventional loan, they don't care whether you live there or you don't live there because they got 20% equity on it now. So if you buy a house on a conventional loan and you put 20% down, say on a $200,000 house, you put $40,000 down, that puts a bank in a leverage position, which means, okay, well, if you don't live here, you do live here. It doesn't matter. We have leverage on you. We got 20% equity. So if we have to foreclose, we're ahead 20%.
Yeah.
Where on the FHA side, they don't have any leverage on it. It's a $0 to dollar loan, which means you don't put money down per se on the loan. You will put money down, which we'll go back to the FHA loan, because they'll say it's a no down loan. But that doesn't mean you don't have to come up with money. Okay, so this is where the confusion comes into play, because the banker as well as the mortgage broker will tell you, this is a no money down FHA loan. But you got to put 3% to cover your impound account.
But you just said no money down.
No money down, okay. So this is where the confusion comes into play. Because what happens is that what the banker and the mortgage broker didn't explain to you, yes, on the $200,000 mortgage, you're not putting any money down on the mortgage. But what you do is you have to put money in your impound account. Now what the impound account is, and people are going to go, well, if it's no money down, it's no money down. Where are you coming up with this down payment? Well, it's not. Basically what they're doing is they have an impound account that covers taxes and insurance. So what they'll do is they'll figure out, okay, for this house, this $200,000 house, your taxes should be right around X, and whatever that X number is, and your insurance should be X, whatever that number comes out to be. And usually when you combine the two, taxes and insurance, which is TI of the PI TI. So on the TI, taxes and insurance, is usually about 3% for the year. So what they do is they say, okay, we want you to bring up 3% of the sale of the house. So you figure 3% of a $200,000 house is going to be about $6,000. Now, your question is, wait a minute, you said no money down. There is no money down. This is basically, you're going to take your money,
Preparing for the
taxes and insurance to come.
Yeah.
Now, when they give you your monthly payment, you want to make sure that you're finding out that the monthly payment, which is principal and interest, you want to make sure that principal and interest, as well as taxes and insurance, is included in that payment. And the reason why is this: that 3% that we came up with, the $6,000, is going to go into an account, and every month you're going to be putting principal and interest to the loan, and the taxes and insurance, a little bit every month, is going to be replenishing that the $6,000. So when taxes come due twice a year, half of it's going to come out in the middle of the year, the second half is going to come out at the end of the year, and then once a year your insurance is going to come out. They want to make sure that you're replenishing that account and you're ahead of that account. So they have the money in this impound account, which is a savings account of yours, that when the time comes due, the bank pays the taxes and the bank pays the insurance. Now, just so you're not being burdened with it, all of a sudden, boom, it's high property taxes once a year, or boom, your insurance payment once a year, you're making these little increment payments every month, which is part of your payment. You're fixed.
Yeah.
So,
bank does all the hard work for you, so you're not paying 3 different people for your home.
The bank is managing it for you.
Yeah.
So the bank, and it's kind of funny because a lot of people don't understand that the bank is doing 2 things. Number one, they're doing you a favor because you don't have to think about the taxes and insurance. Number 2, they're protecting themselves because they want to make sure the taxes are being paid, and they want to make sure that the house is insured.
Yeah, because it's their money on the line.
That's their money on the line. Exactly. So they want to protect their money, and that's what you're doing with your insurance and your impound account. So when they tell you that it's a no money down, it really is not a no money down. You will have to put money down, but it's basically taking it from your savings account and putting into another savings account that you can't touch.
Yeah, it's just preparing you for what's to come.
For what's to come.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So taking that acronym, when they talk about, well, how much is the payment going to be? Well, your PITI. Now you know. Principal, interest, PI. TI, taxes and insurance. So now you know that your monthly payment is X. So let's just hypothetically say that a $200,000 house at 5% interest is going to be $1,100 a month PITI. So out of that $1,100 a month, a portion is going to go to principal, a portion is going to go to interest, a portion is going to go to taxes, and a portion is going to go to insurance. So you're covered. So now you have no surprises. Now, make sure we understand something here. This is on a fixed interest rate, not an adjustable interest rate. This is on a fixed interest rate. Adjustable interest rates we're not going to really get into right now.
Stay away.
Stay away. Stay away from adjustable rates.
Yeah.
Unless you really understand adjustable rate mortgages, which we'll talk about later on.
Yeah.
We don't want to talk about that right now because that gets really confusing.
Yeah.
So you want to know, as a first-time home buyer, how much do I have to pay every month till this loan is paid off?
Yeah.
And as long as you know that, and you know that you can afford that, you're fine. Now, some of the things that will change in your payment, that could change, is if property taxes go up, which sometimes they do, and it's usually in a 10-year increments, your tax and insurance will change. So your payment might fluctuate a few dollars. If your insurance fluctuate, because you stop and think that if you insure your house today in 2018 and a 30-year loan, things are going to be more expensive in 10, 20, 30 years from now.
Absolutely.
So understandably, your insurance is going to go up. So your payment may adjust a little bit for that inflation. So, you may be a fixed payment, But in 10, 15 years, your insurance may go up because everything else around you goes up. So they may adjust that. So keep that in mind. It isn't going to be anything drastic. You'll be forewarned on it. But the biggest thing is, as long as you're taking care of your home, like everybody should be doing, you should be pretty stable. You should be pretty comfortable with that. So that's basically what PITI is about on that.
The PITI is that's the same across the two different types of loans that you talked about?
Okay, so that's one of the key things now. FHA loans are mandatory PITI loans, which means that they will collect their payment to cover principal and interest, taxes, and insurance. Now, conventional loans are a little different. Conventional loans don't always necessarily have an impound account. They may leave that to you to be responsible to pay your taxes and insurance. So, again, on a conventional loan, they're not really that rigid on that side of it because
you already put so much money.
20% down.
Yeah.
You got 20% down. You obviously have enough wherewithal to come up with 20% down. We'd hope to think that you got enough wherewithal to pay your taxes and insurance.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be losing the house because you didn't pay your taxes. So there's a lot of pros and cons to both loans.
Yeah.
Now, depending on the type of conventional loan you have, I'm not real familiar with what the numbers are today, but depending on where you're at on that conventional loan, the loan backer or the investor may require MIP. Now, MIP, and again, we're talking a lot about first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
So we're really getting into another area that's different.
Yeah.
So MIP, this is conventional loans. That's more investors. That's more people that are buying vacation homes.
Yeah.
So when you get on the MIP, it's really kind of like getting off topic of what we're trying to focus on.
Okay.
But we'll touch on it a little bit.
Yeah.
So MIP is mortgage insurance premium, which basically is another form of insurance. So FHA is insured by the federal government, which means that if you don't pay your mortgage and they default on it, the federal government will back that loan. Now, on a conventional loan, they have a dollar amount that sets a cap. Once you break that cap, now you have to have MIP insurance, which is mortgage insurance premium, which means you're going to pay insurance to insure the loan to the investor.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny how you got all these insurances to protect the investor. So basically what that MIP does is that if you default, that insurance will come in and cover the loan. But remember, you put 20% down.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of money on your side and you've already invested in it.
Yeah.
So you don't want to risk that.
Yeah.
So you're going to do your best to make sure that doesn't get lost.
Absolutely.
But that's a whole nother subject we can talk about later on for people that want to learn about investing.
Absolutely.
So
I mean, you mentioned closing costs.
Yes.
While talking about the impound account, your PITI. So what's involved in the closing costs and how does that work?
okay, so in closing costs,
Is that a part of the impound account as well, or?
no. What the closing cost has is there's two parts to the closing cost. The closing cost is actually the cost for escrow. And that is when you buy a piece of property, you want to make sure when you get that property, there's no liens against it. You don't have no mechanic liens. You don't have no judgments against it because the person you're buying it from, you don't know them.
Yeah.
So you don't know what they had going on in their life
Yeah.
with this piece of real estate.
Yeah.
So, they can have anything from, they refer to mechanics liens. Mechanic liens can vary between somebody who sued you for services.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the whole idea of mechanics, you think mechanic lien, someone worked on your car. Well, yeah, it kind of be that simplistic.
Yeah.
That somebody worked on your car and they go, I'll put a lien on your property. And all it is a cloud on the property.
So can we break it up into a scenario like with the Gardenia properties? Like since I owe money on 3 lots.
Right.
And let's say we both build on 1 lot and we go to sell that lot. But our contract with those 3 properties say that at the sell of the first property, we have to pay off the loan for all 3.
Right.
So would the closing costs and the escrow part be a part of protecting the seller of the properties.
Well, what happens on that scenario that you're talking about right there.
Just to put it into a playing field.
Escrow will basically follow the rules that have been established to a property.
Okay.
So you're taking a very unique situation here.
Yeah.
So and in your scenario that you're talking about is that the rules of the contract says that if you build one of the properties, the full loan is paid in full.
If you sell the first property.
If you sell one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, one of the things that you didn't see in the contract, though, doesn't necessarily apply to only selling it. It can apply to refinancing it. Because now you're taking that one individual property and segregating it from the other two.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, that triggers paying off the rest of them.
Yeah.
So what this does, though, with escrow, the whole purpose of escrow is that when you buy a piece of property, you only owe to the bank what you agree to pay for it. And escrow is there to make sure that there isn't somebody else owed on it.
It's making sure everyone's getting paid in the process.
Absolutely. But more so than that is making sure, so let's give the scenario.
Yeah.
So you decide to buy a piece of property, and the person you're buying it from, you're taking their word for it. There is no debt on the property. And you say, okay, I'll buy the property. You buy the property without getting it escrow. Now, keep in mind, you have escrow, and then you have title insurance.
Okay.
Escrow is just a process where two people come together. They get a third party, which is escrow, to basically keep everybody on the same page. Now, escrow is a third party to make sure A and B do what they agree to do.
Okay.
That's what escrow does. Now, escrow also does title insurance. So when A is selling a piece of property to buyer B wants to make sure that they're getting a piece of property and they're paying X. $25,000 for the property. They want to make sure that that's all they're paying is $25,000 for the property. So with escrow and getting title insurance, title will go and do research on the property to make sure there's no liens on it, no mechanic liens, no judgments. It's a clean title.
Yeah.
So that when buyer B gets a property, they pay the $25,000. That's it. Nobody else is going to come back and say, hey, wait a minute. You know, A owed me some money on this property. I want to be paid. Sorry. I got a clean title from escrow. From the title insurance says that everybody was paid. So there's nothing owed to you. Sorry.
Yeah.
That protects the buyer. Okay. So that's very, very important that you have title insurance on a piece of property, because even when we talk about new construction.
Yeah.
Hey guys, you might see a little change here in the environment. I'm kind of just jumping in here. I'm gonna end episode 3 at this point. We are trying something new. We did a bunch of different camera angles in this episode with a camera on my father, a camera on me, and then the main front camera. Doing all of this editing, we're starting to realize that we recorded a very long episode that night, and I wanted to basically break this up so people have time to watch all the content of episode 3. So I'm jumping in here now instead of just ending it off, and just letting you know that I'm making episode 3 into 2 parts. Tomorrow I'll upload part 2, and then hopefully by Thursday night I'll have episode 4 uploaded, which we had dinner with a buyer of one of our homes about 2 years ago, and we basically get his ideas on moving to Hawaii and the expense of Hawaii. That dinner as well will be broken up into 2 actual different episodes because the topics are different. So like I said, I'm just jumping in here to give an explanation on why I'm editing this episode this way, and I'll have part 2 uploaded tomorrow, just so we have 30 minutes episode 3 part 1 and 30 minutes episode part 2, episode 3 part 2. So just so you guys know, thanks again for watching Big Island TV. I'm Cameron Maciel. Thanks for watching episode 3.